Hello, in today's video I'm going to talk about embossing powder. In the June kit I included some Ranger Puffs embossing powder, and I've had a few people ask me to demonstrate on how to use this. To get started, you'll want your embossing powder. I also have a clear embossed ink pad. Really all it is an ink pad with glue on it instead of ink. You can see here, just glue on the pad. You'll also want a tray to dump your embossing powder in, and you'll also want to use your craft heat gun, which I have here. The very first demonstration I'm going to do is just embossing powder and one of its ways to use it in one of the most basic forms. Here you can see I made some flowers using my stamp on a piece of paper and the flocked embossing powder. To do this method, you'll want to take your piece of paper that you want to use. You can do this directly on your card or your scrapbook page, or you can do it on a piece of paper and then cut it out and add it as an accent piece. So to start, you'll want to take your stamp on your block, take your glue, and just press this down into that glue and put it on your piece of paper. Once you have it pressed down on your paper, fairly quickly you'll want to take your tray and the embossing powder, and you want to do this all before that glue dries, and then you'll just dump the embossing powder right over that glue. Tap off the excess, and then take your heat gun and heat that embossing powder up. You'll see when it's ready, after it's heated, you'll see it begin to change textures. It takes a little bit of time to get it to change to the appropriate texture, meaning that it has melted. And again, this one is flocking or puffed embossing powder, so this one has a puffy texture when it's complete. And that was it for that method. You can see we have three stamps here that have the puffed embossing powder on. Another thing you can do, also in the June kit, I included some leaves, and you could, to add more texture to these leaves, you can take I like to take the edges of this leaf and run it in that glue, and then dump this embossing powder right over it, and it should only stick to where I added the glue. And now you can take your heat gun and heat up this leaf. And that kind of gave us a two-toned leaf that looks kind of neat. I also, for this flocking, used it on the letters which were included in the June kit, and I'll show you how I did that. We'll take this G here, and I rubbed glue all over it. And you can use any letter, any chipboard letters that you have that maybe don't match, you have mismatched pieces. You can do this, use the embossing powder to make a matched set. And then again, you'll take your embossing powder, dump it over the G or your whatever letter you have. It should stick. Tap off the excess again, and then take your heat gun and use this. I like how it looks on letters. It gives them a leather appearance, this puffed embossing powder does. Makes them look like you have leather letters on your page. And I'll try and get this closer to the camera so you can see how it looks. The other method I'm going to show you today is my favorite way to use embossing powder, and it's actually a reverse embossing technique, and you'll see here I did a snowflake using this method. To start, again, you'll want to take your glue, but instead of putting it on your stamp, you're going to put the glue right on your piece of paper. And just get a good coating on your piece of paper. after you have your glue on your piece of paper, take your embossing powder and dump it right over that square of glue you just put on your paper. And you'll see it sticks and makes a nice square. Now, what you're going to want to do after you make your first square of embossing powder is melt that. And this takes a little while because it's such a big area, but once it starts to melt, it goes pretty fast. Now after the whole thing is melted, quick before that dries, you want to take your tray again and your embossing powder and dump it over that, and it will stick. It's hot and still melted, and it'll stick right to that. And you're going to do this, I usually do it about 4 times, and that will give you a nice puddle. So I'll just quickly do this a few more times. And now after this last time, after everything's melted, you'll take your clear block again and your stamp. And you're going to push your stamp right down into this puddle. And that's going to do the reverse emboss. And then I usually try to push it kind of hard so you get that embossing powder to move out. Then you can pick it up. My stamp fell off my block, but just pick it up, and then you can see we have our bird. I had a bird stamp this time, and that is pressed down into the embossing powder.